I will now turn it to Paula from Sojourners to kick us off for the second half of this fabulous experience.
Yes, thank you so much, Dorian. And as Dorian said, my name is Paola Puentes Gleghorn, and I'm the Immigration and Women and Girls Campaign Manager for Sojourners. So I wanted to start a little bit with a little bit of information about Sojourners, our organization. And so Sojourners were one of the largest ecumenical networks of Christians in the United States that focuses on advancing the biblical call to social justice and peace. So we really seek to inspire hope and build a movement to transform individuals and then communities, the church, and the world at large. And we have an award-winning magazine and online publication that provides the latest news and thought-provoking commentary from social justice leaders. So if you're a writer and are interested in that, also connect with me and I can connect you with our magazine and online publishing. But I myself, I'm part of Sojo Action, which is our mobilizing arm, and we mobilize thousands of Christian leaders around issues including immigration and gender justice, which is what I work on, but also climate change, criminal justice, racialized policing, economic justice, peace, and nonviolence. And through Sojo Action, we really aim to give people tools to deeply engage and mobilize their faith communities in a very sustainable way. So we really want people to work with their communities to build that movement and work toward justice. So one of the areas that I work on is our Women and Girls campaign, and I will drop the link in the chat so you can see more about that work, and you can also look through the rest of our website. But since the 1970s, Sojourners, we've been really committed to resisting sexism and misogyny, like many of the organizations here, and advocating for a world where women and men and all people are given equal respect and opportunity, both in the church and then in society at large. So we and the Women and Girls campaign that we have really seek to address gender-based violence from a faith perspective and close the gender gap in church leadership. So we do that through storytelling, through scriptural analysis, like what we've been talking about, and other resources. And then we also seek to provide a gender conscious and gender equality lens for all of our other campaigns, for all of our advocacy and publications, making sure that we have that lens when we do conferences, when we write articles, when we do other advocacy that's intersectional there. And then specifically, we also advocate for trauma-informed and women empowering legislation, specifically against sexual and domestic violence. One of the big things that we do, and we did this last summer, was encourage seminaries to include domestic and sexual violence training so that church leaders can be equipped to offer pastoral care to survivors of domestic and sexual violence. And so on that, our work focuses on two main arms. So we have equipping Christians to mobilize their faith communities, and then also giving them opportunities to advocate at the federal level. So one of the things that we do with mobilizing Christians or equipping Christians to mobilize their faith communities is we have a collection of sermons that are 100 sermons against domestic and sexual violence. So I would highly encourage you to go and listen to those. They are primarily preached by women. And this really came after a follow-up to our Broken Silence survey that we will speak out the World Health and Sojourners Commission. So we interviewed 1,000 pastors in 2018, asking them a range of questions around their thoughts and actions surrounding domestic and sexual violence. And we saw that 41% of pastors who had heard of the hashtag #MeToo that was coming out those years also were more inclined than to preach about domestic and sexual violence. So in January of 2018, we invited people to send us their sermons that they had preached. We were hoping to get 100 by the end of the year, but by that July, we had nearly 150 of them. So we put them online there. They're searchable. You can search by location, by text, by congregation, by denomination, and really get a wide range of how people are taking these biblical texts that talk about domestic and sexual violence and building a good theology around that. And as I mentioned before, we also had our webinar series about seminaries, including education around how to respond and prevent sexual and domestic violence. So you can view a recording of that in the chat as well. In that survey that I mentioned before, we saw that 90% of Protestant pastors reported encountering sexual or domestic violence, but only 50% believed that they were prepared to respond or knew how to respond when they encountered that. So we thought if 9 out of 10 pastors are encountering this, but only 1 or only 5 out of 10, it really needs to be 10 out of 10 pastors that are prepared. And a lot of this education can start at the seminary level, at the biblical school preparation, so that they can be prepared when they're encountering that in their ministry. And then we saw that only 45% of pastors believed that their seminary had provided sufficient education. So the hopeful statistic, though, was that 83% reported that they would take action if they had adequate resources. So this was their first step. We had 75 seminary leaders attend the live webinar, but now you can go and watch the recording. And then out of that webinar series, we started a monthly conversation that you are all invited to join. It's on the first Friday of every month at noon. And really it's a networking and community building time with people of faith that are working to eliminate sexual assault and domestic violence, where we can encourage each other, hear updates, and really be encouraged with that. And then with advocacy, we've really been focusing on 2 main pieces. They're the Equal Rights Amendment, and I will also post the link in the chat as my time is running out. And then we've also been doing advocacy, like many others, around the Violence Against Women Act. So a couple of quick ways to get involved. As I mentioned, join our Gender Justice Monthly Conversations, join our Equal Rights Amendment campaign. We also have a fellowship program that runs through the school year. It's a full-time paid internship. You live in DC in an intentional living community. And the next cycle will be the 2022-2023, because we already have the fellows for this coming cycle. And that will open up in October of 2021. So I will also put that link in the chat if you're interested in being one of our fellows in the next year. And then please email me too. We also have interns that help work with our campaigns on these different issues. So you can email me and I will connect you with people who can help you get those internships. Thank you.
Thank you, Paula. And October 2021 is fast upon us. So if this is interesting to you, you should take a look, because I feel like it seems like it's far out, but it's really not. Next, Jacob, I think you're up.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dorian. My name is Jacob Greenblatt. I'm the Senior Legislative Assistant at the Religious Action Center of Reform Judaism, which is the Washington office for the Reform Jewish movement, representing about 1.8 million Reform Jews and about 850 congregations across North America. I'll say first that I actually do not handle our domestic violence or women's portfolio. I'm filling in for my colleague Courtney, who I'm sure many of you know, who is on vacation this week. So I will do my best to sort of provide an overview of what the RAC does, some opportunities to get involved, and then just share the information that Courtney has given me about some of our most recent work on domestic violence and women's issues. I've been tangentially involved with some of it, but I'm looking to her as the expert. So just a little bit about the RAC. As I said, we are the policy office for the Reform Jewish movement. We work on about 70 different issues, everything from gun violence prevention to reproductive health and rights to domestic violence prevention to LGBTQ equality, and so on. All of our work is mandated by the Union for Reform Judaism and the Central Conference of American Rabbis, which are the Congregational Association and the Rabbinical Association, respectively, of our movement. So we are really doing all of our work grounded in Jewish text and Jewish tradition, as I'm sure many of the organizations on this call do with their respective faiths. And we are, like everyone else, working to build a world of justice, of wholeness, and of compassion. And so we do our best to work across lines of difference to advocate for social change and alleviate systemic injustice, and specifically ending injustices that impact marginalized communities. And all of our work is done by empowering our leaders, our clergy, our youth, our lay leaders, folks in our synagogues to take action at the local, the state, the federal level. We also do a little bit of work in Canada, so at the provincial level there as well. We're primarily based in DC, but we have state affiliates in 8 states across the country, in California, Illinois, Florida, New Jersey, New York, Ohio, Pennsylvania, and Texas that are focused a bit more on state and local work. So just to say a bit about sort of our work on gender-based violence specifically. So our work is really guided, as I said, by Jewish values, and specifically in this concept in Judaism called kavod habriot, or the fundamental dignity of every individual. We know that sort of the Mishnah, which is one of our Jewish texts, it teaches one who injures another person is liable on 5 counts. For the injury itself, for pain, for healing, for loss of time, and for embarrassment. And sort of this multi-dimensional understanding of injury addresses the really insidious and pervasive nature of physical and sexual violence, and the ways that these repercussions have sort of gone farther than the act itself. So we're, in our work on gender-based violence, trying to address this multi-dimensional aspect. Some of our specific policy activities are focused on reauthorizing VAWA, which I know folks have spoken about a bit on this call already, and also on Title IX and addressing sexual violence in schools. So back when Secretary DeVos proposed a rule to weaken Title IX, and I think it was fall of 2018, if I'm remembering correctly, we mobilized a number of our high school and college students to fight back against her efforts, which would roll back protections for survivors on college campuses. And so we not only submitted an organizational comment through the regulatory process to the Department of Education, but we had hundreds of high school students send in postcards and letters sharing their personal stories and sort of their perspective as folks who would soon be going to college and wanted to make sure that they have the protections there. I'll say that a lot of our work on gender-based violence specifically is done in partnership with our women's affiliate, Women of Reformed Judaism. They and us, we all pass resolutions on specific policies that sort of give us the mandate to do this work. And they're a really key partner in a lot of our work, but especially on gender-based violence. And then I'll just conclude with an opportunity to get involved. So we, like Sojourners, offer a fellowship for folks in DC. It's our Eisendrath Legislative Assistant Program. I was an Eisendrath Legislative Assistant for our 2018-2019 year and have stayed on at the RAC since then. It's a year-long fellowship for recent college graduates or folks with equivalent academic and professional experience who are interested in Judaism, social justice, policy. You live in DC for a year, you got a policy portfolio of issues, and you are really our movement's sort of point person on that, representing our positions to Congress, to the administration, working in coalitions, things like that. So our applications for the 2021-2022 year are closed, but applications for 2022-2023, like with Sojourners, will open up this fall. I think we're aiming probably for the application to go up in October or November. So I'm popping the link for that in the chat. You do not have to be a Reformed Jew to do it. So we would love to see applications from folks. And I'll also put my email in the chat, and you can feel free to come to me with any questions. And thanks so much.
Thank you, Jacob. Am I right, Sandy? Are you next?
I believe so.
Great.
Good afternoon, everybody. It's great to see you all and be with you here this afternoon. My name is Sandy Sorensen, and I am the director of the United Church of Christ, Washington, D.C. Advocacy Office. And just a little bit about the United Church of Christ. Our purpose is to love God with all our heart, mind, soul, and strength, and our neighbor as ourselves. Our vision statement is united in Christ's love, a just world for all. And our mission statement is united in spirit, inspired by God's grace. We welcome all, love all, and seek justice for all. And the scripture that much of this work is grounded in is from the prophet Micah, from the 6th chapter. What does the Lord require of you but to do justice and to love kindness and to walk humbly with God? And we believe that one of the ways that we make love and kindness visible is through just public policy. So we can do harm to the inherent worth and dignity of our neighbors. And we believe that all people bear the image of the Creator and are deserving of respect and dignity. So harm can be done to others, both through physical individual acts of violence and hate, but we also believe that harm can be done through unjust public policy. And so our work is to focus on the public policy issues that impact the most marginalized and people who are pushed to the margins of society. So we engage with UCC members and clergy. We engage with a wide spectrum of the interfaith community is very important. Our interfaith and ecumenical commitment and partnerships are very important to us, and other secular and other justice advocates. We identify emerging public policy issues that call for our attention. We educate and empower UCC members and others about those issues. We advocate directly with members of Congress, congressional staff, administration officials, and other decision makers on a local, state, and federal level. And then we develop coalitions and work in coalition with interfaith and secular groups to gather information and track and influence legislation and policy. So the United Church of Christ has had a long-standing commitment to justice for women. We are one of the first denominations to ordain women, and we try to continue that tradition through our public policy advocacy around justice for women. And that includes a whole spectrum of issues, both domestic and international, that we believe impact women's health and women's safety. So we work on the violence against women legislation in partnership with the Interfaith Coalition. We also work on things like workplace fairness, a raise in the minimum wage, voting rights, access to health care, quality public education for all people. And then on an international level, we've worked on the International Violence Against Women Act, but we're also very mindful about the reality of global gender-based violence. And so some years ago, we began a campaign to address the impact of women in conflict situations. So the use of torture, the use of rape as a tool of war. And our messaging around that was women's bodies are not battlefields. And we continue that languaging today around a number of issues that are related to gender justice. We have, I encourage you to visit our website, and I must give the caveat that it's being revamped. So we're still adding and retooling, but at www.ucc.org, you can find out more information about the UCC. You can find out some of the information about some of the issues that we advocate on and programs that we have, even beyond justice for women. We have a fantastic curriculum on racism called Sacred Conversations to End Racism. We have a wonderful curriculum that we promote in partnership with our Unitarian friends called Our Whole Lives, which is a comprehensive human sexuality curriculum, which begins from grade school on up. And part of that core of that is to teach individuals to love themselves and respect themselves, and to understand what it is to live in a respectful, loving, equal relationship. And so that's on the website as well. And there's a tab there that you can find our Washington office. Some of the other resources we have a printing arm called Pilgrim Press. And I just wanted to highlight one of the resources that came out last year that I think is really powerful, is called The Words of Her Mouth. And it's Psalms for the Struggle that are written by women. So they've taken the Psalms and rewritten them in their own words. And it's just beautiful. It's a beautiful work. And we have a host of other resources that you can find on the website and also through Pilgrim Press. So ways to get, we work primarily through our UCC Justice and Peace Action Network, which is an electronic network of over 20,000 members across the country, and not limited to the United Church of Christ. And through that action network, we send out a weekly action alert on something that's moving generally on a federal level. So that goes out to folks every week, and they can take action on that, encourage members of their community and congregation to act on it. And then we send a monthly electronic newsletter with information about conferences, resources, campaigns, ways to connect with some of the partners that we work with. And that comes out every month. So if you go to www.ucc.org and you go to the Washington, D.C. tab, you should be able to join the network, and anyone is welcome to join the network. And that's a great way to follow much of the work that we do. So in terms of ways to get involved, we are just about to launch our next search for the 2-year Justice and Peace Fellow, which is a position based in Washington, D.C., generally for college grads or others with relevant professional experience and above. And that is a 2-year internship that is paid with health benefits. And so keep an eye out. We are going to be posting our application for that position very shortly. And I'm also really excited to say that over the past 3 years, we've convened a women's table of the United Church of Christ, which has been a table of both clergy, men and women, clergy women, and lay women. And we are now forming, and we're just finalizing the job description for a new position, which is a part-time position called Minister for Gender Justice. And we hope to post that position next week. So keep an eye out for that. We also often work with schools to serve as field placement sites so that students can get credit for some of the work that they do with our office. We will from time to time have shorter-term internships, like summer internships. So that happens often. Pre-COVID, we used to do week-long immersions with youth groups, college groups, seminary groups. We're hoping the day will come when we can do that again, where we just immerse in a particular issue and spend a week learning about those issues, learning from our partners, and doing advocacy work. So that's also another possibility. So probably the best way to be in touch is I'll drop my name in the chat, my email address, sorry. The fellowship is not limited to United Church of Christ members. We work and many of the internships and immersions and other experiences we have are open to not people who are not members of the UCC, and we welcome that. So I look forward to hopefully crossing paths with some of you in this important work. And I think I can speak for my colleagues to say we need all the help we can get. So please continue with your justice commitments and your justice interests, and know that there's a really wonderful community out there to support you. And looking forward to seeing what emerges in your career paths.
Thank you so much, Sandy. Lots of ways to engage. I believe Harmeet, you are on deck, and a lot of people don't know her on the call. So I'm really excited that you're here today. Thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for having us. Hello, everyone. My name is Harmeet Kaur. My pronouns are she and hers, and I'm the Director of Programs with the Sikh Family Center. I just want to thank Dorian for inviting us to share about our organization and our work. And just a little bit about Sikh Family Center. We're a small community-based organization. So our mission is to promote community health and well-being with a special focus on gender justice. We're actually one of the only organizations, or the only organization in the US that focuses on gender justice in the Sikh American community. And we've been around for the past decade. We provide trauma-centered interventions for victim survivors of violence while working to change the social and cultural conditions that allow gender violence to occur in the first place. So some of our services and strategies involve prevention as well as interventions and education. So our training, outreach, and advocacy are grounded in cultural tradition, grassroots power, and intergenerational healing. One of our core values is called Sarbatta Pala, which means wellness for all. So we don't turn anyone down, especially if somebody's trying to reach out for services and support. We started off doing needs assessments, so community needs assessments, going in person, doing surveys literally at gurdwaras, which are Sikh places of worship. So to understand what the community was, needing, what are they experiencing, and how are ways that we can help. And from those initial needs assessments, we developed our national helpline, which is the first of its kind for the Sikh community again. We provide mobile advocacy and interventions through our national helpline. So we have trained peer counselors who respond using a trauma-informed lens. They're, are able to provide non-judgmental support with compassion. And we prioritize emotional and physical safety, especially for those who are reaching out if they are survivors of gender-based violence. Majority of the callers that do ask for services and support are unfortunately those who are survivors of gender-based violence. So we hear, even though that we support a wide range of social needs like mental health and even immigration rights. So we don't necessarily provide those services in-house, but we do warm referrals. So we work very closely with other organizations, such as all the wonderful organizations here who might be working on different advocacy roles. So we advocate on behalf of the survivor. We'll do a warm contact or referral, and we provide language capacity as well. So the primary language that some of the survivors speak, other than English, is Punjabi, and that's the language that we provide support around. Our other programs and services include community education and prevention. So we've focused on developing a youth-led workshop on healthy boundaries and consent. That's called the SED series, and it's led by youth and it's for youth. So it's a safe space for them to really initiate conversations amongst their peers, amongst Sikh youth, especially around issues that are not often discussed in the community. So these safe spaces are created for them. We put together a curriculum, a presentation, and a facilitator's guide. And we train college youth who want to facilitate it as well. So we provide that in-house training, and then they can go out on their own and conduct these workshops amongst their peers. And any type of support they need throughout that process, we're able to step in and provide. The workshop is free to download on our website as well. So we've made it more accessible now with COVID. We were conducting these in person initially, but we've now transitioned to make it more adaptable and reach a larger community across the United States. One of our other strategies include providing community education. So we've done short videos addressing different needs, so including violence prevention, child sexual abuse. We had our first anonymous Sikh survivor highlight her experience in assessing support from the community, especially her experience when she is looking for support from a gurdwara, from our place of worship. And one of our most recent resources, which I wanted to highlight, was our Family Violence Resource Guide, which is specifically for Gurdwara leadership. So for the priests, for the Sevadars or Gurdwara volunteers who actually at times have reached out to us when they've come across a survivor that's reaching out for services and they don't know what to do. So this was put together after we've conducted listening exercises with other individuals who volunteered they work directly in the Gurdwara. So they're primarily the Gurdwara, the way that they're structured is they're male dominated spaces. So we've had in some cases like very good working relationships, in other cases not so good. So we wanted to create a strategy that would streamline services for survivors. So if they are accessing that space for support and services, the Gurdwara or the people who are called upon for support, they know what to do. So we've outlined in this guide simple steps that can be taken that are still culturally appropriate, still not asking too much. We're not expecting others to become experts or too involved in complicated cases, but at least not turn somebody away, especially if they're looking for support and the other individual might not know what to do. So it's something simple like, oh, here's a resource card. It has your local domestic violence organization. This also includes Sikh Family Center's helpline number. You know, I don't know what to do, but here's something that I can give you. So it's not turning anybody away without giving them any information or making them feel like, you know, they made the wrong step by even asking for support here. So we've kind of worked directly with our volunteers and our gender justice intern who's helping us distribute these guides. There's over 300 gurdwaras across the country, so we definitely have our work cut out for us, but we're utilizing a lot of just community support and our internal networks who have warm contacts at the gurdwaras. Remember I mentioned that these are spaces that are not easily like, you know, for us like women to kind of step in and talk to men who are often hearing like, oh no, this stuff doesn't happen in our community, or no, we don't want to be involved. So we're trying to open that door a little bit and make these conversations more mainstream. We have had very good response with the guide so far. So one of the things we've done is trainings for the Gurdwaras, for the Gurdwara leadership. They've asked for it. So so far it's kind of kept our momentum going, and we're going to continue doing that and working directly with them to help them implement these safer, consistent steps so that whenever a survivor does reach out, they can, they know what to do. They know how to get involved and support. And if anyone here is working with, you know, other Sikh survivors or have questions about our programs and services, we're more than happy to answer or help try to provide any insight in coordinating services as well. And other ways to get involved, you can volunteer with our organization. Of course, we have ongoing projects, and there's a lot of information on our website, including conducting outreach or research for new resources, because there's limited information out there for our community data-wise as well, but also very limited resources, especially when we're trying to reach the most vulnerable populations. And yeah, I will share a link for our website as well.
Thank you so much, Harmeet. I know a lot of the organizations that everyone's heard from also have similar resources and similar challenges in reaching leaders in these male-dominated spaces. So I was actually able to add the Sikh Family Center's new resource onto the IC page, along with lots of other resources from across different faith traditions. Thank you so much for being here. Last but certainly not least is Tashika.
Great. Thank you all so much. It's wonderful to be here and listen to all the programs that you all have. It's very amazing. So first, let me just thank all the organizations here doing great work. My name is Tashika McBean, and I'm the Human Rights Officer for the U.S. Bahai Office of Public Affairs. Like many of the organizations who just presented, part of the work of the U.S. Bahai Office of Public Affairs is to advance gender equality and in a way eliminate gender violence. Our office utilizes the collective experience of the American Bahai community and works with like-minded organizations and thinkers to contribute to social progress. As you have already heard, I've been listening very keenly, there are many avenues to engage in eradicating gender violence. And we could think about creating programs and policies, drafting resolutions, community engagement, and all these various tools which are essentially necessary. But one thing that the U.S. Bahai Office does is that we engage in shaping and exploring thoughts and ideas that could potentially eliminate violence against women and girls, advance the meaningful participation of women in peace building, and rethinking prevailing conceptions about human security and power and leadership. And as a discourse officer, we operate generally in the space of thoughts and ideas. We engage in very high-level conversations and discussions about prevailing assumptions and status quo, just to think about why do we believe the things that we do, and how can we change thought to then change the programs and policies that come from these thoughts. So we believe that, the life of society depends on the thoughts and ideas that underline. If you think about everything that we see in our society, from projects and policies, it all started from what somebody thought. What are the underlying assumptions behind these programs and policies? So in our estimation, if you want to change the atmosphere of violence against women, we need to explore the ideas and thoughts regarding power, control, the role of women in society, the value of women, etc., which are all underlying considerations when we think about domestic violence and ending violence. Our work at the office is generally grounded in Bahai principles, and we fundamentally believe, as a spiritual truth, as you heard in all the other presentations today, that women and men are equal, right? There's a Bahai quote that says, "When women participate fully and equally in the affairs of the world, when they enter confidently and capably the great arena of laws and politics, war will cease. For women will be the obstacle and hindrance to it." So it's a spiritual principle that men and women are equal, and the engagement of women in all these various arenas is necessary to advance peace and security, and in many ways, ending gender violence. Throughout the last 35 years, our office has engaged widely with a wide range of civil society organizations and US government agencies to promote gender equality and the advancement of women, including supporting the Violence Against Women Act, which we just heard there's been a lot of support for this particular for VAWA. Our office also is a very active member of the US Civil Society Working Group on Women, Peace, and Security. And as occasion arises, we host discussions and conversations drawing from a diverse perspective in the field. These conversations offer an opportunity for deeper reflection on ideas and practices, informing efforts to advance women's participation in building and sustaining peace, both in the US and abroad. This group also engaged in examining the prevailing conceptions of peace and security, the role of gender equality in advancing conditions for collective thriving and security. And we also are working currently on recasting the narrative as it pertains to the role of religion in advancing gender equality. Thinking about the way we utilize religious knowledge to advance gender equality, there's one prevailing narrative about the negative effects of religion and gender equality, but I know that throughout the various religious traditions, the promotion of gender equality is something that is very clear, and that's a narrative that also needs to ascend to the fore. So we engage in conversations about this, recasting that narrative about how religion can advance gender equality. And recently, one of the examples of a conversation that we held, we collaborated with the Gender Equity and Reconciliation International to explore gender reconciliation. So men and women engage in a 3-day exploration about how this patriarchal structure of society has influenced their relationship to each other and to themselves. So participants engage in a self-reflection on questions such as, what has society taught you about how to be a woman? Or what has society taught you about how to be a man? And what has your parents taught you about how to relate to a man or a woman? And in that space, you kind of explore the assumptions and biases, and you see where there's room for change, where there's preconceptions, and you just follow a narrative that have no basis in reality. And so when you change your ideas, you kind of change the programs and policies that develop from these ideas, and which includes, how do we begin to eliminate gender violence? What is the role of men? What is the role of women? What are the roles of, how do we create policies that kind of, tap up these structures or eradicate these structures? And so this is part of the work that we do at the office. We also engage in other areas, including, racial justice, and there's intersectionality between racial justice and gender violence and all of these things. It also stems in the area of thoughts and ideas and exploring these issues in very in-depth conversations. And so I'll leave it there for now.
Thank you, Tashika. I love the work of the Bahai office. I always find it so fascinating. I love the idea of like reframing how we think in order to go downstream to the policy and the action that a lot of us engage on. It's just every time you speak to Tashika, I'm like, I want to do it all. Are there any? We have a minute or two before I sign us off. So I want to give an opportunity for some of the folks on the call to ask any questions either in the chat or raise your hand. I know it's been a lot of information to digest over the past 90 minutes. So
just quickly, I posted the website in the chat function. And when we think about, and a lot of folks can engage with the Bahai office because as we know, like there's no one solution to these problems. So as many people that we can engage in to explore these assumptions and ideas, I think it leads to a richer conversation. So our office is open to anyone who wants to engage with us. Thank you.
And
yeah, Sharon.
I didn't realize I was off mute. It's a good thing I was quiet. So for the interns on the call, I want to lift up all of my colleagues' work. Sojourners, I oftentimes listen in on their First Friday event. So if even if you listen in on once, you'll just be inspired. But the Baha'is, I'm part of their regular, they have a faith and race dialogue that meets like a kind of quarterly, whatever, get your name on their list. And they write this really good, like 2-page thought paper. And so even if as interns you don't have time to join us for the dialogue, just reading through the thought paper is great. But everybody, United Church of Christ, Sojourners, everybody does great work. So interns, we love you. We hope that you'll check us all out.
And just quickly, those thought papers is a collection of all the ideas in these discussions. So how you have these discussions, then you create this document that just, builds upon each other. So
very, very helpful. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you all. Thank you to all of the representatives from the faith-based organizations that are here talking about the incredible work. Thank you to the interns who were able to join us today. And thank you to the interns that will be watching this in the future when this goes up on the website. We really appreciate it and are excited to be able to share our work and for you to continue in the movement and, come after us and continue on all of this work that all of us do every day and is our life's work. So thank you all so much again for joining us and have a good rest of your day.